disappears if this becomes law, and the Obamacare fine for people who do not want to pay for health insurance, the individual mandate, goes away as well.
The bill is put together. It's not a done deal till all the votes are done.
But that bill may not be quite as simple as advertised.
Simplifying the tax code so that you can file your taxes on a form the size of a postcard.
Because there are still 7 tax brackets for single filers and 7 tax brackets for people who are married or file a joint return, just like there are right now. The top rate for both reduced from 39.6 to 37%, beginning at $500,000 and up for single filers, $600,000 and up for joint filers.
This delivers and prioritizes middle-class tax relief. And for many families in America, working blue-collar families will see a tax reduction of between $1,200 and $2,000.
0 Democrats showed up to put their signature on the report that negotiators from the House and Senate collaborated on in conference, and they're still trying to whip public support against it.
God bless wealthy people. I'm glad we have them. But they don't need a tax break.
Democrats didn't leave the conference empty-handed. They stopped Republicans from repealing the Johnson Amendment, which prevents churches from engaging in political activity. Democratic Senator Ron Wyden gleefully stated, quote, "I will continue to fight all attempts to eliminate this critical provision that keeps the sanctity of our religious institutions intact, prevents the flow of dark money in politics, and keeps taxpayer dollars from advancing special interest biddings." But Republican James Lankford laments that, quote, "the federal government and the IRS should never have the ability through our tax code to limit free speech. This tax reform bill was an appropriate place to address this historic tax problem." The chances of this tax bill passing next week are improving. Senator Marco Rubio is on board because the refundable part of the child tax credit has jumped from 55% to 70% for low-income families. Republican Bob Corker also announced he's a yes with a phone call to the president. The Tennessee senator says, quote, "I believe that this once-in-a-generation opportunity to make U.S. businesses domestically more productive and internationally more competitive is one we should not miss." Senator Thad Cochran, who had an outpatient procedure to remove a non-melanoma lesion from his nose on Monday, is expected to be here next week. And lawmakers think Senator John McCain, hospitalized for complications from brain cancer treatment, will be here too.
But I'm told that he will be here next week and voting, and more importantly, we all wish him the best of health.
2 holdouts tonight. Senators Jeff Flake and Susan Collins still have not committed to support this bill. They had been saying that they wanted to see the final text, which was just released a few minutes ago. Normally, when a group or organization drops something well after the close of business on a Friday, it is to bury it, but Republicans insist they think this is their big opportunity for a big legislative victory by the end of the year. Bret?
And just doing the math, even if they both voted against it and McCain and Cochran showed up, they'd have the votes to put it over the edge.
That's right.
Peter, thank you. We'll talk more about this with the panel. President Trump today traveled to the FBI training facility for an interesting visit at the graduation for a law enforcement training course. Ironic, perhaps, in light of the president's ongoing criticism of the Bureau. The trip comes amid new scrutiny of communications between FBI personnel, calling their objectivity into question. We have Fox team coverage tonight. Catherine Herridge here at the Bureau with the latest on those texts we've been telling you about. But we began with correspondent Kevin Corke at the White House and the president's message to the FBI. Good evening, Kevin.
Hey there, Bret. Listen, what a difference about 75 minutes can make in your life, right? It was in that span today that we saw the president once again criticize the senior leadership of the FBI for being unfair and biased in the Russia and Clinton probes, and then head right over to Quantico, where he was able to praise the rank and file for their service and sacrifice.
The President of the United States has your back 100%. I will fight for you, and I will never, ever let you down, ever.
A clear, definitive declaration of support for the FBI and law enforcement today from President Trump speaking to graduates at the Bureau's Academy at Quantico, Virginia.
I have so many friends that are police officers, so many people in the FBI. These are great, great people. These are really heroes for all of us.
Mr. Trump's comments, his first at the training facility since he slammed the agency for apparent bias in the Clinton private email server investigation, as well as the ongoing Russia probe, the latter of which spurred the president to unleash a barrage of tweets, including one less than 2 weeks ago, in which he suggested that the FBI's reputation was in tatters, worst in history. His attorney general wasn't willing to go that far.
Well, I don't share the view that the FBI is not functioning at a high level all over the country. He spoke to them today, the first time a president in 47 years has spoken to the FBI at Quantico, their graduating police academy class.
Speaking at a summit on combating violent crime today, Sessions backed the president's overall message, trying to keep things positive.
There is absolutely no collusion. That has been proven. When you look at the committees, whether it's the Senate or the House, everybody, my worst enemies, they walk out, they say, there is no collusion, but we'll continue to look.
Just over an hour before speaking at Quantico, the president lashed out again at the Russia probe, which has led to 2 unrelated convictions, including that of his former national security advisor, Mike Flynn.
Do you consider a pardon for Michael Flynn? I don't want to talk about pardons for Michael Flynn yet. We'll see what happens. Let's see. I can say this. When you look at what's gone on with the FBI and with the Justice Department, people are very, very angry.
Anger thanks in part to the latest revelation that several agents involved in the Russia investigation appear to some to have a bias against the president, based on numerous text messages, many of which were strongly critical of then-candidate Trump. Standing room only crowd today over in Quantico, Bret. By the way, it was mostly law enforcement officers there, some family members, but I should also point out most of the folks in the audience were not actually FBI agents. Still, the president received a very warm welcome and robust applause, breaking up his speech on several occasions, which is a little counterintuitive when you consider all the negative buildup before he went over there, Bret.
Kevin Cork, live on the North Lawn. Kevin, thank you. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis says he does not have to go easy on Russia when he talks with President Trump. That runs counter to a report yesterday in the Washington Post. Mattis spoke with our own national security correspondent, Jennifer Griffin, today.
Do you find yourself having to not raise issues when Russia is belligerent to the U.S.? And do you, because there continues to be this debate within the administration about whether Russia interfered in the election, did Russia interfere in the U.S. election?
No, I have no reservations, nor has the president ever evidenced any pushback when I bring up Russia in a national security context. And obviously this has come up, whether it be in Syria or NATO and all the other places where you've heard me speaking about this. The intel people, I have not seen this shyness, including over at the White House in the sit room.
And with regards to the Russian interference, did Russia interfere in the U.S. election?
Yes, I believe they did.
On other subjects, Secretary Mattis says moving the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem does not put U.S. troops and citizens in greater danger in the Middle East, in his words. And he says North Korea's ICBMs cannot yet threaten the U.S. homeland. Now to the latest on those controversial text messages we've been telling you about that have given critics of the special counsel investigation a lot to complain about, a lot to question. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is here tonight with the latest. Good evening, Catherine.
Thank you, Bret. Asked about the prospect of a second special counsel, the Attorney General Jeff Sessions said the Justice Department will act if allegations of bias are proven.
We're going to take seriously the concerns that have been expressed. We will never fail to monitor our people, and we're going to insist on the highest standards of behavior. Everybody has to be accountable and responsible. You can have arrogance seep into sometimes an institution, and that's not acceptable.
The powerful chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, wants more information about the anti-Trump texts exchanged between FBI agent Peter Strzok and FBI lawyer Lisa Page, as well as their communications with current FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who is now set to testify on Capitol Hill Tuesday behind closed doors. These images from May show McCabe with Page in the far left of your screen. McCabe supervised the Clinton email case and then the Russia probe before the special counsel took over. Senator Grassley said this August 2016 2016 text goes beyond a personal political view and appears to cross the line, taking some official action to create an insurance policy against a Trump presidency. Andy's office apparently refers to McCabe's. And the senator said this April 2016 text refers to Hillary Clinton and indicates that Strzok and Page discussed the ongoing criminal case on a different phone to avoid being traced. The timing may be significant because the text was sent 3 days before Clinton aide Huma Abedin's FBI interview about mishandling classified information and a week before Clinton's longtime aide Cheryl Mills was questioned. Also, former FBI Director James Comey is under scrutiny for leaking memos of conversations with President Trump to the media after he was fired in May. During this week's testimony, the Deputy Attorney General, who was Comey's boss at the time, said the memos were government property and not Comey's to make public.
He comes out and he makes a memo memorializing the meeting. Is that memo DOJ property?
Generally, Congressman, I would think that it would be. It might depend on what's in the memo or what the subject matter is, but generally the answer would be yes.
Fox News has previously reported that the Justice Department and the FBI are reviewing more than 10,000 text messages. Most were withheld from Congress and the media because they're of a personal nature and said to be unrelated to the email or Russia probes. Bret.
Catherine, thank you.
You're
More
welcome.
on the president's comments today, specifically about one city a bit later. Paul Manafort, President Trump's former campaign manager, has been released from house arrest on a $10 million bond. A federal judge ruled Manafort can relocate from a home in Virginia to another in Florida, but will still be monitored by GPS tracking and have an 11 p.m. curfew. Manafort pleaded not guilty to charges including money laundering, tax evasion, and failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. Stocks today closed at all-time record highs again. The Dow surged 143 after word that the tax deal was looking like it was going through. The S&P 500 gained 24. The Nasdaq jumped 80. For the week, the Dow gained 1 1/3 percentage points. The S&P 500 was about up 1 point. The Nasdaq finished ahead almost 1.5. A federal judge in Philadelphia is blocking the Trump administration from enforcing new rules that would make it easier for employers to opt out of the Obamacare requirement to provide birth control to employees. Critics say the law would dramatically reduce women's access to free birth control. Supporters say it allows companies to abide by religious beliefs. The man accused of driving into a crowd of counter-protesters in Charlottesville, Virginia last summer is now charged with first-degree murder. James Alex Fields appeared in court for a hearing yesterday. Prosecutors allege Fields rammed his vehicle into a crowd that was protesting a white nationalist rally. One woman was killed, several people injured there. Now to an amazing story tonight about how 3 young computer experts could do so much damage. And the even more remarkable answer to the question, why did they do it? Here's Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen.
In September 2016, the French telecom provider OVH suffered a devastating denial of service attack. The hackers employed a botnet, taking remote control of devices on the Internet of Things like webcams, DVR systems, and routers, and using them to multiply an army of malware-spreading zombies.
It's distributed denial of service attacks. That's going to require voluntary cooperation among all the different owners and operators of different privately held companies.
When a similar attack the following month struck the American tech firm Dyn, it crippled the internet along the eastern seaboard, knocking Twitter and Netflix offline and triggering fears of global cyber war.
The question now, was it the work of another country?
Whether it's a cyber crime chessboard or a cyber espionage chessboard is unbeknownst to me.
I don't have any information to share about who may be responsible for that malicious activity.
Now, according to filings in federal court in Alaska and New Jersey this week, the culprits behind the Mirai botnet technique, though not the Dyn attack, are revealed to be 3 college-age men, among them 21-year-old Paraz Jha of New Jersey, who have pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges in a variety of online schemes.
The marketplace is within the video game Minecraft.
Rather than advancing hostile military interests, authorities said the hackers were targeting those server hosts that provide protection against botnet attacks for the estimated 55 million monthly players of the video game Minecraft, hoping then to provide such protection themselves and make millions in the process.
They actually enslaved 600,000 devices around the world. And it's important to understand as we move forward into an age where so many different kinds of devices are connected to the internet, those kinds of vulnerabilities are multiplied hundreds and thousands of times because you're really opening up so many more points of vulnerability.
An executive order signed by President Trump in May tasked the Secretaries of Homeland Security and Commerce with developing a plan to reduce the threat from botnet attacks. Bret?
James, thank you. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has reversed himself on his offer of unconditional talks with North Korea. Today, America's top diplomat told world powers North Korea must earn the right to negotiate with the U.S. Tillerson also called out Russia and China during comments before the United Nations Security Council.
The United States will not allow the regime in Pyongyang to hold the world hostage. We will continue to hold North Korea accountable for its reckless and threatening behavior today and in the future. We particularly call on Russia and China to increase pressure, including going beyond full implementation of the UN Security Council resolutions.
Secretary Tillerson says that while the U.S. does not want war, it will use all necessary measures to defend itself against North Korean aggression. Up next, we take you to a rainforest for jungle warfare training. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 29 in Philadelphia has a grand jury report in the wake of a pledge's drinking death. Says Penn State University officials displayed a shocking apathy to dangers from excessive drinking and that its inaction allowed criminal acts to occur. The report recommends a series of changes that the school should undertake following the death of a 19-year-old student in February. Fox 11 in Los Angeles, where the huge wildfire burning for nearly 2 weeks northwest of Los Angeles claims the life of a firefighter from San Diego. Officials are not saying how 32-year-old Corey Iverson was killed. Authorities say the blaze has scorched more than 394 square miles. And this is a live look at New York from our affiliate Fox 5, one of the big stories there tonight. And all over the country, the premiere of the new Star Wars movie. The lines will be long in many places for the weekend showings of The Last Jedi. Disney says Thursday night preview screenings brought in $45 million. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back. Another first for SpaceX. The private company has launched a recycled rocket with a recycled capsule on a supply run to the International Space Station. The unmanned Falcon rocket blasted off today, and the final stage booster is being reused after a 6-month turnaround. The Dragon supply ship is hauling 5,000 pounds of goods, including 40 mice for scientists and 20 barley seeds for Budweiser. Many American military personnel are receiving training right now on how to fight what could be the next war. It's far from the deserts of the Middle East and requires a very different kind of preparation and mindset. Tonight, Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt suits up for some jungle warfare training.
As dawn broke, we boarded a Black Hawk helicopter for a spectacular journey across the roof of the rainforest before being dropped in. Joining soldiers here in Hawaii, many of them veterans of the campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan, learning to fight a very different kind of war.
The goal is to be able to teach the skills that students can survive, fight, win in a jungle environment.
No one at the 25th Infantry Division's Lightning Academy, as the jungle training school is called, will talk about policy. They won't name the threat, but they all know what might be coming. And as every Vietnam vet knows, the jungle itself is not an easy enemy to conquer, and the only way to do it is on foot. The loud rumble of armored Humvees is perhaps the most familiar sound from the desert and urban wars the U.S. has been fighting. Here it is the sound of soldiers moving in almost total silence, save for the soft thud of their boots on the ground.
It's so restrictive. It's just everything's so tight.
After 2 tours in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan, the jungle is a whole new challenge for First Sergeant George Fagali.
In Iraq, while I'm dismounted, so it's just very restrictive.
A new experience too for Staff Sergeant Apollo Rees after 3 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq.
It's a whole different monster. In simple terms, it's completely different than being from operating over there.
These soldiers spend 3 weeks living and fighting in the jungle. Every minute designed to give them the real-world experience of potential future wars.
Oh, yes, sir. It just, like I said, makes me a force multiplier.
You're going to be pretty proud of the work you're doing here.
Oh, it's all the guys. It's all the instructors. They are the ones, the NCOs, are the glue to this place, and they just make it better and better every day.
They also make the U.S. Army better prepared for whatever's next.
That's our job, is to be ready to fight the next fight.
And if the next fight is jungle-based, it will be tough, so the training is tough too. Of 75 soldiers who began this course 3 weeks ago, just 33 made it through. Bret?
Jonathan Hunt in Hawaii. Jonathan, thank you. Up next, sending United Nations peacekeepers to America, making the Windy City a Trump-free zone, and the president asks, what's going on in Chicago? First, beyond our borders tonight, more clashes today in the Middle East over the president's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and move the U.S. embassy there eventually. 2 Palestinians were killed in violence in the West Bank and along the Gaza border. Dozens others injured. 1 Israeli officer was hurt. NATO is expressing concern about a Russian missile system that could carry a nuclear warhead. The alliance says the weapon could violate a landmark Cold War arms treaty banning a certain class of land-based missiles. Russia is rejecting the accusations. And France is reacting cautiously to allegations from the U.S. yesterday that Iran is supplying weapons to terrorists in Yemen. The U.S. presented what it says is proof in the form of charred weapons remains and the rockets. A French spokesman says the French have not yet drawn any conclusions. The Trump administration, however, is stepping up the rhetoric on Iran's supply to terrorists in the region. Just some of the other stories beyond our borders tonight. We'll be right back. President Trump wants to know, quote, what the hell is going on in Chicago? He asked that question today at the FBI Academy. He's talking about the seemingly unchecked gun violence in the city with some of the strictest gun control laws in the nation. There's plenty of politics and extreme rhetoric blowing around the Windy City, and the murder rate there, sky high. Correspondent Matt Flynn has the story from Chicago.
And you look at what's going on in Chicago.
President Trump, speaking at the FBI Academy's graduation ceremony, did not hold back when it comes to his anger over Chicago's violent crime.
What the hell is going on in Chicago? What the hell is happening?
"28 people have been murdered in the Windy City so far this year. Last year, a total of 731 people killed, averaging 2 per day. Cook County Commissioner Richard Boykin is calling on the United Nations for relief.
I'm hoping to appeal to the UN to actually come to Chicago and meet with victims of violence and maybe even possibly help out in terms of peacekeeping efforts.
The president's latest attack on Chicago did not specifically mention the city's mayor, Rahm Emanuel. However, the president has feuded with Emanuel over the mayor's defiant stance as a sanctuary city. And Trump has repeatedly called out Emanuel about the city's crime, even warning he'd send in the feds. This year, the city has received more ATF agents. But this week, Emanuel again thumbed his nose at the president.
And I think what he's doing is wrong for the direction of the city. It's not how I wanted the election to turn out. And so we've declared Chicago is going to be a Trump-free zone.
Critics say the mayor has been more focused on his sanctuary city status and running for re-election than worrying about the overwhelming number of African Americans being murdered in his city.
And it's really troubling that we have a mayor in Chicago who has demonstrated that black lives don't matter to Rahm Emanuel, black votes matter to Rahm Emanuel.
This year, Mayor Rahm Emanuel and the police superintendent successfully lobbied for a state bill that will crack down on repeat gun offenders. And the city of Chicago is witnessing a drop in crime citywide, especially in its most dangerous neighborhood, Englewood. Bret.
Matt Flynn in Chicago. Matt, thank you. In tonight's Whatever Happened To segment, gun control. Yesterday was the 5-year anniversary of the massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut. 26 people, including students there, shot dead. 2.5 months ago, the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history in Las Vegas. 58 dead. This evening, correspondent Doug McKelway with a reality check on the current gun control debate and what, if anything, may happen legislatively in the coming congressional election year.
To anyone listening, the sounds in Las Vegas on October 1st seemed unmistakably like a machine gun. Subsequent investigation of America's worst mass shooting showed gunman Stephen Paddock fired over 1,100 rounds from semi-automatic weapons, in effect supercharged by an accessory called a bump stock. There was widespread agreement that their availability was a mistake.
That's what we want to prevent, for someone to be able to fire 400, 500, 800 rounds per
that would stop that. Not only will I support it, I'll be an advocate for that law.
A handful of congressional Republicans and even the NRA joined gun control advocates in a call to regulate the devices. The sale of bump stocks was put on hold, but more than 2 months later, nothing has changed. The company that manufactures them was back in business a month after the Las Vegas massacre. On Thursday, the 5th anniversary of the Sandy Hook School massacre, a divided nation took 2 different tracks. A group called Sandy Hook Promise released this mock newscast video urging more gun violence prevention.
I'm here at the scene of tomorrow's shooting, where a 15-year-old will kill 4 children, 2 adults, and then turn the gun on himself.
While Republicans celebrated one of their solutions to gun violence with the House passage of a concealed carry reciprocity bill.
Law-abiding Americans should be able to exercise their right to self-defense even when they cross out of their state's borders.
Some Democrats lambasted it.
It's stunningly dangerous and opens the floodgates to guns.
To get some Democrat votes, House Republicans combined the reciprocity bill to another that would penalize government agencies for not reporting violent offenders to the NICS, the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. That stemming from the Air Force's failure to report Texas church gunman Devin Kelly's conviction for domestic assault to federal authorities, a mistake that allowed Kelly to buy the 4 guns he used in the church massacre. In the Senate, separate reciprocity and NICS bills are awaiting action, but there's little sense of urgency. The reality is that ever since the Virginia Tech massacre, once the shock wears off, so does the political will for action. Bret?
Doug McKelway in the White House briefing room. Doug, thanks. If you have a story you'd like us to update and you're thinking, whatever happened to whatever, drop me a line on social media and we'll check it out on Twitter and Instagram. Use @BretBaier and the hashtag #whateverhappenedto, or on Facebook at facebook.com/BretBaier_SR. We get our first look at the final tax reform bill in Congress. Reaction from the panel on a busy day, busy Friday, when we come back.
I think it's going to do very, very well. I think that we are going to be in a position to pass something as early as next week, which will be monumental.
I think it'll get worked out one way or the other, but it's going to take good faith on both sides to be able to do it.
The tax reform bill is a disaster. It helps the wealthiest, most powerful corporations and individuals, and it hurts the middle class.
I think maybe the most important element people aren't yet thinking about is this April 15th. When you file your taxes, that is the last time you will file under this monstrous broken tax code.
Well, it's in. It's done. They've finished the negotiating, and it is locked in stone. Right now, the bill has been filed, the tax reform bill, in the House, expecting a vote early next week. And here are the details. We put them up before. 7 tax brackets, top rate individually at 37%, taking that down from 39.6%. Doubles the standard deduction for single filers and married couples, lowers the corporate tax, as we talked about, to 21%. That begins January 1st, 2018. You have a continual write-off for state and local taxes up to a certain amount. Expands the child tax credit, and that was a sticking point. Eliminates the Corporate AMT continues the charitable deduction contributions, provides immediate relief from the death tax or the estate tax by doubling the amount of the current exemption, eliminates the Obamacare individual mandate penalty tax. Today, we heard from Senator Marco Rubio and Senator Bob Corker, who were saying that they were no's and they are now yeses, and that changes the entire math. Let's bring in the panel. Steve Hayes, editor-in-chief for the Weekly Standard. Leslie Marshall, syndicated talk radio host, and Charles Hurt, opinion editor for the Washington Times. Long time coming, Steve. This is finally in stone, and it seems like the momentum is kind of unstoppable right now.
It seems like that. I mean, of course, we thought that before, and then things the obstacles have presented themselves. I think nobody's happier about this than Charlie Hurt, who finally saw that top rate go from 39.6 to 37.
Still too high.
I know, you want to bring it down even further. Look, I think this is, overall, for Republicans, this is important for a couple of reasons. One, it will likely have some economic benefits. This is what Republicans have argued all along. They disagree about exactly what the economic benefits will be and how stimulative it'll be in the short term, but there will be some stimulus. And two, of course, it gives Republicans something to take to voters, and that's going to be very important. I think the inclusion of the expanded child tax credit that Marco Rubio and Mike Lee fought for really all along, but made a hard push for, beginning this week in a meeting with Senator McConnell. Marco Rubio made the case, said he was going to be a no. It turned out to be a threat that he intended to carry out, and won the argument. I mean, won the battle. I think that's going to be helpful for Republicans as they make the case that this is something for families in the middle class.
And that debate played out today, Senator Portman and the president on this.
And in terms of the child tax credit, I think you'll see some improvements there for folks who are at the lower end of the economic ladder. So I think it'll be a very popular bill, and among our Republican colleagues, I think we'll get the votes.
The Democrats have done nothing in terms of children, in terms of child tax credit. We're putting in a tremendous child tax credit, and it is increasing on a daily basis.
So it goes to $2,000 and now up to 70% for the lower income can essentially be paid out off of this.
And again, look, there is some stuff in here that's good, and certainly stuff that's in here that is good for, my husband and certain people in certain tax brackets. I don't think it addresses all of the concerns that the middle class, especially the blue-collar working class, that put Trump over into that White House with their votes. What do they want? They want job. They want to see money in their fists. They're not getting a check that's cut for $2 grand. That's a whole different story when you break it down over 12 months. And when you look at deductions, they are for the rich. I mean, what type of people are itemizing their deductions? Lower middle class Americans in this country aren't doing that. So I don't think it's going to help them in the midterm election. I don't think the child tax credit is enough. Not just that. In addition to that, the polls just show it's not as favorable to the American public. And at the end of the day, this is, hey, look, we finally did something for Republicans, but how much of it is politics, since they can't even really pay for this, versus in the best interest of their constituents?
On the public polling, I mean, it's pretty complex to tell in an elevator story. If by the time you get to 2018 and it sinks in February or March and the economy is rising further than even it is now, that one would think would have benefits across the board.
Absolutely. And of course, the reason that it's so complex to explain in simple terms in the first place is because the stupid tax code is so freaking impossible to understand in the first place, and very wealthy people have to hire people to come and suss it all out and figure out how.
I love your passion on this.
It's unbelievable. But I do think you're exactly right. If at the end of the day this does help the economy and those people do get some of those jobs, and all you have is Democrats sitting on the sidelines and talking about. It has a tremendous impact.
To that point, a little montage of the president interacting with the press on the South Lawn this morning.
It's a shame what's happened with the FBI, but we're going to rebuild the FBI. It'll be bigger and better than ever. I think he should. There is absolutely no collusion. That has been proven. By